Welcome to this ILM Level 3 Award in Leadership and Management assignment tutorial for developing yourself and others. And this is part one of two parts of this assignment tutorial. The first one is on knowing how to identify development needs. I would recommend that you have the assignment template in front of you and also the marking sheet as we go through this tutorial. Please submit your assignment as a PDF and best to use Arial font 12. Okay, so let's get started. Assignment criteria 1.1 asks you to identify your own learning style and the learning style of another member of the team. So the best way to do this is to use our Honey and Mumford's Learning Styles questionnaire. And you can complete that for yourself, and you will have done that as part of your program. And also you can do that with your team member. And it would be great to pick a team member who's maybe a bit different from you, but no worries if not. But I suppose it's really about explaining that learning style, your primary learning style, and the primary learning style of your team member. And I suppose describing that in detail with some examples of how those learning styles are exemplified. So, for example, if you're an activist, you will like to experience things, you will like to dive in, try things out, and maybe be resistant to talking through a lot of plans or thinking about the context of the activity in terms of a theory or framework. Whereas if you have a team member who's a reflector, they may need time to kind of process the information, trial a few things out, visualize what it's going to look like, and they will need some discussion around that before they want to move forward and make an active decision or to actually act on the decision. Okay, so useful to do that exercise with a team member, and really you will need this throughout this assignment to complete a number of activities with your team member. 1.2 asks you to use a simple technique for identifying your own development needs and the development needs of a team member. So it asks you to use a simple technique to identify a range of your own development needs and the development needs of your team member. So I would suggest that you could use either a SWOT analysis. So, simplicity is the key here, where you look at your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats, and your team member does the same, and then can draw some conclusions from that. I've also provided you with a gap analysis, so that might be really useful as well, and that is slightly more structured in terms of current role, future role, and development you might need in terms of technical needs, behavioural needs, knowledge, etc. So there's two different ways you can do that, and you can use either of those. However, if you use another technique in your workplace as part of your role, such as a skills matrix, that's perfectly acceptable as well. So that's about identifying your development needs and the development needs of a team member. And along with the learning style in 1.1, in 1.2, it would be great if you could have an example of that as a completed document, which you could then put in your appendix as evidence that you've completed that. And what would be great in the body of the assignment is to put some of the outcomes of that into the body of the assignment. Okay, that's worth 12 marks, so worth spending the time on that. 1.3 is about identifying potential barriers to learning. And we did this as part of your workshop. So common barriers that we talked about are around time, willingness of people, mindset, attitude, support and resources, and those kinds of things as potential barriers. So I would detail those. So when we mean time, we mean that people find it difficult, or they're overloaded with work, or they're not managing their time properly, etc., etc. So you're actually describing what the barrier is rather than just listing titles as words. ILM will want to see the context behind that. So it's really, really important that you actually describe it in detail, and it's worth 12 marks. So it's fairly straightforward, and you can gain a lot of marks from that. The second part kind of really nicely joins into that. So 1.4, explain how barriers to learning can be overcome. So against each of the potential barriers, what I would advise is that you identify solutions, but the solutions must be step-by-step solutions. So they must be, for example, if time was the issue, what I would do is, first of all, there would be identifying what the learning is, identifying potential timescales, reviewing the workload, planning in specific times when that can be done, identifying KPIs, creating meetings in order to review and continue on with that. And in THB you have talk time. So talk time is a great tool which you can use for managing that. So you could even use the step-by-step process in terms of talk time with those check-ins. But the idea is that you just don't say as a solution for the barrier is just to make more time. It must be step-by-step solution so that it's fairly detailed, nearly the process that you would follow to address the issue. If it was something like senior management and seeing the value in learning and development, the solution around that might be around educating senior management on the value of learning. So, a step-by-step solution could be something along the lines of identifying some data to provide a business case, to create a business case around what's important about learning and actually how that could directly impact on your part of the business. It would be then setting up a meeting with influential people and people who are going to provide financial or time support. It would be then producing maybe some kind of report, presenting to them, and following up with them, then trialling some learning and development activities, gathering evidence, evaluating, presenting back, etc., etc. So it's really showing that you're building a case. So that is the level of detail we're looking for. 3 or 4 barriers would be great. So that's the first part of the assignment.